Hey, what's going on, guys, and welcome back to another video. Today's video is kind of a welcoming gift for newer players that are joining 2042. We're going to go over 15 tips you guys need to know to be able to play effectively and efficiently in Battlefield 2042. Personally, I'm seeing a lot of new players coming into the game, probably because of the news around the next Battlefield game coming out consistently these days, and people want to know what 2042 looks like now after more than 3 years. And while I believe 2042 isn't as good as any Battlefield game that you come from, it's now a decent game to play in 2025. Now this video is for people with previous Battlefield experience who are new to 2042. If you are completely new to Battlefield franchise, I still suggest you watch this video because you'll learn a lot, but the target audience is still those who are new to 2042 with Battlefield experience. So without further explanation, let's jump right in. Tip number 1 is about the plus menu. Now this is completely new in Battlefield. You can actually switch attachments in the middle of the match. While so many people like this and so many don't, as long as it's in the game, you need to be using it to gain some advantage over the others. So as you can see here, you can have a maximum of 3 attachments for every weapon part, and in the game, you can switch between them when needed. This works very well with underbarrel and scope attachments, since you'll be absolutely a versatile killing machine if you know how to use them, and basically when to use what. So make sure you use those slots and not miss out on your weapon's potential. Tip number 2 is spotting. Now a lot of you guys with Battlefield experience know this exists in Battlefield games, but most people just ignore how important this Battlefield feature is. You spotting someone from 100 meters away makes them appear on someone else's minimap who's close to the target, and that might really save someone's life. Also, spotting vehicles will give your friendly drivers and pilots a fair advantage simply because they'll know where the enemy is. So there's a big difference between knowing something exists and actually making good use of it. Don't neglect spotting enemies. It plays a big role in any Battlefield game. Tip number 3 is about suppressors. So I have a video about this topic explaining it in detail. If you want to know more, that video pops up right on the top right corner. Make sure to check it out as well. But let me briefly explain to you how this works. So suppressors work differently in Battlefield 2042 compared to Battlefield 4, for instance. Here we have 2 types of suppressors and 4 variants of them. So we've got light suppressors with 2 variants being the wrapped and 6KU suppressors, hiding you in plus 30 meters on the minimap, and heavy suppressors with 2 variants being the Type 4 and PB heavy suppressors, hiding you in plus 15 meters. Except for the wrapped suppressor, they all reduce damage to a degree. Some ammo types will affect the hiding range of suppressors as well. They're going to go over and discuss them later in the video. But for now, just keep in mind that suppressors in 2042 are range dependent. Tip number 4 is about vault weapons, a completely new term in Battlefield games. These weapons are basically from previous Battlefield titles existing in Portal. At some point, DICE decided to import some of these weapons into the main game, but there are still plenty left to come if DICE is willing to do that. These weapons are from Battlefield 1942, Bad Company 2, and Battlefield 3, and you can see them for each category in the collection menu. They can add a lot of variety to the game if all imported, to be honest, and I hope that happens in the near future. Tip number 5 is about different ammo types. Now this is also new in Battlefield, and again I have a video basically explaining everything you need to know about ammo types. It pops up right on the top right corner. If you want to know details, just go ahead and watch that as well. But briefly speaking, we've got 5 ammo types being standard issue, high power, close combat, subsonic, and armor piercing. Standard issue gives you balanced performance, high power gives you more damage and muzzle velocity for less fire rates, close combat gives you more fire rates for less velocity and damage per range, armor piercing deals damage to armored vehicles, and lastly, subsonic rounds remove bullet tracers, and it's not like completely removing them. It's harder for the enemies to know where they're being shot at from, and more importantly, these rounds complement suppressors. So for light suppressors, you'll be invisible on the radar in plus 15 meters, and for heavy suppressors, you'll be completely invisible regardless of range using subsonic ammo. So that's something you need to keep in mind about subsonic. They complement suppressors pretty well, actually. Tip number 6 is about scope glint. You probably know what that means, especially if a sniper looks directly at you. It looks like someone's waving a flashlight from 500 meters away. Yeah, that's called scope glint, and it works kind of different in 2042 depending on weapons you play with. Now for SMGs and sniper rifles, 4 times scopes and anything above 4 times will have glint, while anything below 4 times will not. For assault rifles and DMRs, anything above 4 times will have glint, while 4 times scopes and below will not have any glint. Lastly, shotguns and LMGs will never have glint regardless of your scope magnification. So keep this in mind next time you just want to play the game. It might help you stay more covered in some situations. Tip number 7 is about in-game stats of Battlefield 2042. It's just crap. I suggest you do not pay the slightest attention to what it says because it's most likely just rubbish. Good news is there's a spreadsheet for 2042, and all credit for this goes to Sorrow, the creator of this magic tool. It's a little bit complicated and I really can't explain this to you in this video. I'll put the link to it down in the description, and I have another video explaining in detail. That also pops up on the top right corner, so make sure to check it out if you want to know more details about weapon stats in 2042, and I'm pretty sure you're going to need that as well. Tip number 8 is about different types of grenades. Now, there are some grenades in 2042 that are new when it comes to Battlefield games, and they're most of the times really effective. One of which is the EMP grenade, which can disable vehicles, destroy gadgets, and disrupt enemy players. It's really an effective gadget, especially in tight maps like Redacted and Stadium, with crowds of players in a small hallway. Also, you have the anti-tank grenade, which explodes on impact and deals a solid amount of damage to enemy vehicles. This is only available to engineers, so if you go against vehicles, make sure to make good use of this as well. Also, we've got spring grenades, capable of killing enemies behind cover. Pretty solid choice in some maps as well, so make sure to try them all to get the perfect sense of these throwables and, kind of get used to them to know what fits your playstyle better. Tip number 9 is about graphics settings for those PC players out there who are new to the game. So in terms of graphics, we need something sharp and clear with maximum FPS and image clarity. Unlike a game like Battlefield 4, where mesh quality, for example, could actually mean a lot, here in 2042 it means nothing in terms of image clarity. All you need to do is to put the texture quality on ultra so the game looks just better, and the rest of the options on the minimum amount possible, and you still get that sharp and crispy image that you want. Here's a picture of my graphic settings. I think this is something that you guys need to be also using. If you have a higher end machine and you don't really care about FPS that much, you can go ahead and put things on ultra and high, but for me, this actually works. It gives me a clear image with maximum FPS possible. Tip number 10 is about damage number, which by the way I get asked a lot about. So in 2042 this option is off by default. However, you can turn it on to see exactly how much damage you deal to vehicles with rocket launchers, to enemies, and generally speaking anything that deals damage. Now to do this, you need to go to options, hot general, and then scroll down all the way till you see the damage number. Turn that on. You can also change the size and position as you wish. It's an effective little tip right there for some of the more detailed biased players. Also, if you scroll back up just a little bit, you'll see an option called camera shake. Lower that as much as possible as well, because that shaking effect isn't something you really want. Tip number 11 is about specialists and their gadgets and special traits. So in 2042 we've got specialists, unfortunately. Each one of them have their own special abilities, and if you choose one, you need to know exactly what they do to be able to use them properly. So every specialist has a unique gadget and a special trait. Now to know how that works, simply select any specialist, and on the left side it's explained. For example, here we've got Zane. His special gadget is the XM370A burst gun, capable of killing people behind cover, and his special trait is called Perseverance, which grants him a healing burst after each kill. Knowing this information helps a lot in unlocking the potential for every specialist that you want to play with and get good with, so don't overlook this at all. Tip number 11 is about masteries. It's some kind of progression indicator for almost every gadget, weapon, and vehicle in 2042. Even specialists and classes have masteries all the way from T5 to T1, which is the best you can get. So to get a T1 mastery on a weapon, for example, you need to get 1200 kills with it. Same thing applies to gadgets and specialists with different requirements. So to know about your masteries, you can do that in the collection tab. So you can see here that I have the T1 mastery for almost all the weapons, some of the gadgets. I'm not a vehicle player, so I don't really have a lot of T1 masteries there, and it's just a good progression thing to give you some more reason to play different weapons, vehicles, and specialists. Tip number 13 is about weather changes in the middle of the round in some maps like Kaleidoscope and Hourglass. This manifests as hurricanes and sandstorms, and sometimes you can take advantage of this feature using some specialists like Sundance and weapon scopes like the 2038 Thermal to see things better around you. Also, hurricanes might take you up to the sky. It's a simple way of transport in 2042 that so many people don't even know about. Keeping these things in mind might serve you well in your future journeys in 2042. Tip number 14 is about minimap view distance, which can really be a life changer for you. Now, this is by default on close, which gives you a 40-meter radius of what's going on around you. You can go ahead and change that every round by pressing N on PC. I don't really know the key binding for that on consoles, but there's a way you can set your default view distance to medium or even far, so you don't have to change it every single time. To do that, go to Options, Display, and then Minimap. Here you can put your default minimap view distance on whatever you like. My favorite sweet spot is medium, gives me a 100 meters radius, and I believe it's enough really. Last but not least, tip number 15 is Squad Revive. This feature was first introduced to the franchise in Battlefield 5, but if you're coming from Battlefield 4, let's say, this is going to be new to you. So here in 2042, apart from medics, your squad mates can also revive you even if they're not playing medics with like defibrillators. The only difference here is that medics can revive you with full health, whereas squad mates revive you with 20 HP. That was also something new I thought you guys need to know. This helps a lot in situations where you play with squad mates and no one's playing support. You can revive those squad mates as many times as you like. So here you have it guys, 15 tips for people who are new to Battlefield 2042 simply because there are so many new players in the servers these days and I want them to get the hold of things quicker, making things just a bit easier for them. Hope you guys enjoyed and hope this was helpful. If you have anything on your mind that you need some help with, make sure to comment down below. Either me or someone else will surely give you the correct answer. Thanks for watching and until next time guys, stay cool.